Hello and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. A new Russian ambassador to Poland has just been appointed by Vladimir Putin. According to the Russian state news agency TASS, Georgiy Mikhno will assume the position. According to the Ukrainian state news outlet Ukrinform, Mikhno works for Russia's foreign intelligence service operating under diplomatic cover. He has held senior positions within the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including Deputy Director of the Department for New Challenges and Threats and Head of the Department of Pan-European Cooperation. The diplomat will replace Sergei Andreev, who served as Russia's ambassador to Poland since August 2014. He was previously slammed in Poland for parroting Kremlin propaganda, and during some of his public appearances, a number of protests occurred. TVP World has asked the Polish Foreign Ministry for comment. This story will be updated as further details emerge. European security, transatlantic cooperation and military ties between Poland and the United States were the key topics of a high-level meeting in Warsaw today. General Alexus Grynkewich, Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces and head of US forces in Europe, met with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Earlier, the general met with Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, who emphasized the importance of allied cooperation and national defense capabilities. The visit comes shortly after General Grynkewich warned the US and European Union may have just 18 months to prepare for a potential global conflict involving China and Russia. Speaking at a defense conference in Wiesbaden, Germany, he suggested that a coordinated strike between Beijing and Moscow could be possible as early as 2027. The United States will provide Poland with a $4 billion loan for defense purchases. The loan agreement was signed on Friday by the Polish Defense Minister and the U.S. Secretary Arms Control and International Security.
In times like these, security must be our absolute #1 priority, regardless of our political emotions and regardless of our views. The matter of Poland's security, cooperation with our allies, the resilience of our society, and a large and strong army is not a political issue. It's a patriotic issue. This is our responsibility to future generations and our duty to past generations. Will we leave Poland and Europe safer, more prosperous, and better? Or will we leave it mired in chaos, hostility and lies, under permanent threat from our adversaries?
Ukraine's parliament is set to vote on an anti-corruption bill next week, following a wave of public protests and international criticism. The bill aims to restore the independence of two key anti-corruption bodies, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. The Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, Ruslan Stefanchuk, announced that lawmakers will vote on President Zelensky's new bill on July 31st. This move comes after Parliament passed a controversial law earlier this week, placing both agencies under the control of the Prosecutor General, a position appointed by the President. The decision sparked Ukraine's largest protest since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 and drew sharp criticism from Kyiv's Western allies. President Zelensky quickly backed away from the law and now urges swift approval of the new bill to ensure it can be signed without delay. The law signed earlier this week by President Zelensky has triggered nationwide protests as well as criticism from the European Union. In an interview with TVP World, Andreas Umland, an analyst from the Swedish Institute of International Affairs, said that Zelensky is now trying to resolve the problem.
It looks now, I would say, like a public relations disaster for Zelensky, especially against the background that now apparently in this new draft bill that Zelensky has proposed, basically the previous steps would be reversed and there would be a sort of reconciliation then of the interests both of the security service of Ukraine on the one hand, and on the other hand, the civil society and international partners of Ukraine, and that sort of the interests of both sides would be considered. I think that should have happened before. That was this whole scene this whole theater that we, in a way, observed the last 3 days, was unnecessary and has damaged, I would say, Zelensky, but he's now trying to repair that. There have been already also Western commentators who have, in reaction to this crisis, proposed that Zelensky should step down and should give way to somebody else. The problem being that there is no somebody else. So there are, if you look at the opinion polls, no serious contenders against Zelensky. There was for a while a certain political competition, if you want to call it that way, from the former commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, who is currently the Ukrainian ambassador in London, who went up in the opinion polls for a couple of months.
Russia launched yet another attack on Ukraine on Friday, targeting Kharkiv. At least one person was killed and another 12 injured, including a child. The strike occurred at around 11:40 a.m. local time and targeted the Industrialny district of the city. A medical facility and a house were heavily damaged. 4 people were hospitalized, according to Governor Alexus Grynkewich. Russia attacked Kharkiv for the second consecutive day on Friday, with a strike on Thursday leaving over 40 people injured. In recent months, Moscow has been intensifying attacks on Ukraine's second largest city, which is located over 20 kilometers from the Russian border. China's BYD auto manufacturer plans to delay mass production of its new factory in Hungary until the end of the year, according to a Reuters report which cites sources close to the company. The plant will run below full capacity for at least the first 2 years.
Reuters reports that despite operations being halted in Hungary, BYD's new factory in Turkey will begin production earlier than originally expected. Citing lower labor costs, Reuters sources say the production there will vastly exceed its announced plans. BYD now plans to make only a few tens of thousands of vehicles over the first year of production in Hungary. The initial manufacturing plan called for a capacity of 150,000 vehicles with a maximum capacity of 300,000 cars produced per year. American tech giant Intel is pulling out of planned factories in Poland and Germany. This decision comes as the company's new CEO seeks to cut what he considers unnecessary costs. The US company said it is cancelling plans to construct a semiconductor factory near Wrocław, southwestern Poland. The factory was supposed to create around 2,000 jobs. This pullback comes after Intel completed a majority of its planned job cuts, letting go of some 15% of its workforce. The company said has a goal to cut operating costs by $17 billion in 2025. The German Intel plant was supposed to be the biggest semiconductor factory in Europe. The company's new CEO announced Intel will take on a new approach when it comes to expanding production. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that his country will move to recognize Palestinian statehood, drawing criticism from Israel and the United States. The move is expected to put pressure on other European powers to do the same. 11 out of 27 EU member states, including Poland, currently recognize Palestine's statehood. Our correspondent Alex Cadier has been following diplomatic reactions to the announcement and joins me now from Brussels. Good afternoon, Alex. How have Israel and the US reacted, and what does this mean for other European countries?
Good afternoon, Marie. Some very fierce criticism from Israel of the French president, as you would perhaps expect. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that this declaration and a Palestinian state would allow for a platform of the annihilation of Israel. We have seen Gideon Saar, the foreign minister of Israel, saying that this is a gift to Hamas, particularly in the wake of October 7th. We've seen criticism from Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State. We've also seen a rather unusual tweet from Ambassador Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador to Israel, saying that he can reveal that the Palestinian state that President Macron wants to recognize will be in France, in the Riviera, and be called Frankenstein. Quite an odd response there from the tongue-in-cheek ambassador to Israel from the United States. But nevertheless, this is a significant diplomatic development. This is a very significant move for France. It has the largest Jewish and largest Muslim population in the European Union, and President Macron himself recognizing that this will put pressure on other G7 and Western European countries, of which France is the first to recognize Palestinian statehood, to do the same. A lot of pressure on UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to follow suit. Of course, others in the G7, most notably Germany, seem unlikely to follow, but this has been an issue dividing Europe. You rightly mentioned most of the Central and Eastern European countries recognized Palestinian statehood back in 1988, but certainly this remains a divisive issue, but a historic moment, a landmark decision from France, recognizing that Palestinian statehood, pressure from the US, criticism from Israel, and now pressure on European powers to follow suit. Marie?
Some interesting and strong statements being made there. Alex Cadier reporting live from Brussels. Many thanks. Nuclear talks between Iran and 3 European countries have begun in Istanbul. The countries have previously warned Tehran that if no progress on a nuclear deal is made, they would impose heavier sanctions.
The 3 European countries in question are the members of the E3, Britain, France and Germany. Along with the US, China and Russia, they were the signatories of the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, from which the US withdrew in 2018 under the previous Trump administration. The talks in Istanbul marked the first nuclear negotiations with Iran following Israeli and US attacks on the country, and aim to reach a new compromise. Prior to the talks, however, Iran stressed that it will continue to enrich uranium.
Latvia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is urging caution after revealing a growing number of Latvian nationals falling victim to deceptive job offers linked to migrant smuggling across Europe. The ministry has warned citizens against being tricked by criminal networks posing as legitimate recruiters.
Since the beginning of 2025, 33 Latvians have been arrested across Europe for migrant smuggling, with the majority detained in Poland, 25 individuals in total. Additional arrests have been made in Hungary, Croatia, Lithuania, and Italy. According to the Latvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, criminal organizations are actively recruiting Latvian nationals via social media, offering seemingly legitimate transportation jobs. Latvian authorities are warning citizens of the severe legal consequences. Smuggling migrants is a criminal offense, punishable by lengthy prison sentences. In Poland, for example, those convicted could face up to 8 years behind bars.
Thailand and Cambodia have exchanged heavy artillery fire along their disputed border for the second day, despite international calls for an immediate ceasefire. At least 16 people have been killed as the conflict continues to escalate.
On Friday, Thailand's military reported clashes in the Ubon Ratchathani and Surin provinces, with Cambodia using artillery and Russian-made BM-21 rocket systems. The firing erupted on Thursday, with both sides accusing each other of sparking the conflict in the disputed border region. Authorities on the Thai side said that 100,000 people have been evacuated from the conflict zones. In the Surin province, Reuters journalists reported explosions and a heavy military presence as Thai armed forces mobilized, with convoys of armored vehicles and tanks moving toward the border. The clashes have spread over a 209-kilometer stretch of the border, an area that has seen territorial disputes for more than a century.
Nearly 5 years after a devastating fire gutted Notre Dame Cathedral, the last of its copper apostles has been hoisted back into place. St. Thomas was lifted onto the cathedral's revived spire on Thursday, completing the circle of 16 statues that once guarded Paris's most famous roof.
Suspended from a crane against a blue Parisian sky, the 3-meter likeness of St. Thomas settled into his perch, restoring the full company of apostles and evangelists that ring the spire. The copper figures have been removed for restoration just days before the 2019 blaze. Now, one by one, they have come home.
He's the patron saint of architects. He's a symbol of the profession. You can see he's holding an architect's ruler. He's the foreman of the construction site, and now he's been restored to his original place.
The statue's face, modelled after Gothic revival mastermind Viollet-le-Duc, again surveys the Seine, as crews apply the final touches after the cathedral's public reopening in December 2024. The painstaking rebuild has been called a struggle for France's very soul. With the spire crowned and its guardians restored, Notre Dame's silhouette and the spirit it represents stands whole once more.
And that good news concludes Midday Report today. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.